Hello, today we're going to talk about an exciting topic that is chiaroscuro, which literally means light dark. Using light and dark to create the illusion of three-dimensional space, volume, light, and shadow on a two-dimensional surface. We've already approached this in the cube assignment, and today we're going to be working on drawing a sphere using chiaroscuro in a gradual transition from light to dark to give the illusion of this rounded sphere. This is also known as shading. Now, just a little background here. Way back in ancient Greece, around 300 BC, there was a philosophical outlook on life that was confident and that believed in the beauty of the human body and in the natural world, and the art that the Greeks produced was very lifelike and realistic. Later on in the medieval period, starting around the 400s up to 1400, medieval Christianity kind of took an opposite view, that the human body was full of sin and temptation and the natural world was evil, and we should focus on the spiritual, and their art, medieval art, tended to be more abstract and less realistic, less based on observation. In the Renaissance, 1400 to 1600, Greek artists like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo revived, to some degree, Greek humanism and developed techniques for creating realistic, illusionistic art on a two-dimensional surface. This was at a time when painting was becoming an important art form. The medieval portrait on the left is much more flat and stylized and symbolic, whereas the Mona Lisa on the right is naturalistic, based on observation of an actual person in a space with light and shadow. Chiaroscuro, again, is the use of gradual changes from light to dark to create that sense of rounded surfaces as the light falls on them. Here are some details of Leonardo's famous painting, Mona Lisa. Here are some charcoal drawings using that same technique of light-dark, chiaroscuro. The one in the middle is by a Hanover student from a year or two ago. The other two are by different artists. And now, we're going to work on a sphere, everybody's favorite thing to do. So we're using this photograph as a model, and this sphere is a great exercise to work on your use of chiaroscuro, which means light dark. And it's a way that we can use light and dark to create the illusion of three-dimensional form, light and shadow. Might also call this shading. So the shading, or the chiaroscuro, we're going to use on this sphere is the same as you would use on a person's face or any sort of drawing like that. Anything more complicated. First of all, we got to get our format here. It's not quite a square. It's a little bit wider than it is tall. You can see there, still a little bit left there. And then the sphere itself is not right in the middle. It's a little bit over to the left. So whenever you draw a circle, you want to make sort of an axis lines. Let's see, it's a little higher up than the middle of the paper. So when you draw a sphere like this, it needs to be even on all sides. And the way our arms work is it's easy to draw a circle up to a certain point, but your hand can't really bend that way, or your elbow can't bend that way. So it's good to go in both directions. Try to get it, each one of these quadrants about the same. And once you get it roughly drawn, you can turn it this way and see which way it needs to be smoothed out and which parts of it are out of whack. Turn it every possible way. The circle is going to look just the same from every point of view. Drawing a perfect circle, most people think is impossible. Some people think that Leonardo da Vinci came close. Some Buddhist monks use this as a form of meditation, taking ink and trying to draw a perfect circle without the ability to make any corrections because it's ink. So it's kind of a lesson in focus and also a lesson in dealing with imperfection. Once you get the relative shape of the sphere down, again, this is going to be a kind of messy drawing at first. So don't worry about all these lines. We're also going to draw the shadow here. Now, if the light was coming directly down from here, it would cast a shadow underneath. And we would draw that as an elliptical shape using the same process, going back and forth. But in this case, as we see from the drawing, from the photograph, the light is coming slightly from the top and also from the left and casting a shadow that way. Light is coming from here. So our elliptical shape is more on this plane. It actually goes off of the paper. Looking at this, I probably have this a little bit too wide. So you don't see much of the elliptical shape here. Mostly here. And I'm going to go ahead and draw through the sphere there to make sure that I get this elliptical shape of the shadow correct. The cast shadow, which is this, is just as important as the dark and light shading and creating that illusion. Now we also have this diagonal line behind the back. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, a little more than a fourth of the way down here. Goes something like that. When you're using charcoal or pencil, you can add dark material and you can also remove the material using the eraser. I've had students, a lot of time a good exercise to do is cover the whole surface with dark charcoal and then just pull out the light areas with the eraser. So right now I'm looking at the darkest part of this seems to be kind of in this area. And when I add shading, it kind of goes along the contours of the sphere, and the lightest area is here where the light is hitting. When I add shading, I'm just going to do it very gradually and build it up rather than put in a lot of really dark charcoal at first that I might have to revise later. So just kind of understanding that the light's coming from here. It's going to be lightest in this area, and you would think darkest down here, but we have a bit of reflected light, where the light is hitting the surface here and reflecting back on the bottom of the sphere. So we've got a little bit lighter area there. Start blending some of this in, and then you can add more. You can use straight lines, cross hatching, anything that works for you. This kind of charcoal is easy to blend with your fingers. Pencil can be blended this way too. It's a little harder to do. So I'm starting to get away from my outlines and get to edges here. So the next thing before I get too much of this shaded in would be to darken in the background here, because that's what's going to give us the definition of the shape of this sphere on the top part of the drawing. One thing you always want to look for is your value relationships. Obviously this is lighter than that. This is darker than that, but at some point they're exactly the same. We almost lose that edge there. Same here. It's lighter than the background. It's lighter than the background. And then at some point it's almost the same. And then here it's lighter in relation to the shadow. The shadow itself has more than one value. It's dark right under the sphere, and then kind of has a dark core and sort of fans out. This background area is not completely white. We'll need some of that color, that value, when we start getting into the real subtle nuances of the sphere. So it's a messy looking drawing right now, but we can make it as sharp as we want. Just work slowly and gradually building up these values. And once you get the values pretty accurate, then you can start working on edges. So I'm going to go ahead and go past the edge a little bit into my sphere here, and then take an eraser that's been sharpened and start drawing that in. This edge here, since it's closest to where the light is hitting, is going to be the lightest. I'm getting a little bit out of round, so I'm going to have to go back and fix that. When we're finished, we don't want to have any lines, just edges. We have a little sort of highlight right around here, the brightest part. The sphere is still a little bit lighter than the background as we come around this edge, but at some point it's going to get darker. Right here we have the darkest part of the sphere that's even darker than the background there. So this is a matter of working back and forth till we get the values just right. I'm working with vine charcoal now. When we want to add more darkness, create more drama, more illusion, we'll add in some compressed charcoal, which is darker. The more value contrast you have, the more convincing this illusion will be. So here we need to sharpen this edge. And the real tricky part is going from this dark edge to the edge in the part of the paper that is darker. So we'll work on that and continue working. I just wanted to show some finished drawings. This one was done using the gray paper and adding dark and light charcoal. This is one, the size that I'll have you do this, using the full size of the paper, using the fine charcoal and the compressed charcoal. And another possibility is using black paper and adding the white charcoal. So we'll be working with charcoal and drawing the sphere, everyone's favorite thing. And again, this will really help to learn about shading and modeling three-dimensional forms, whether they're simple or complicated.